The piercing wail of ambulance sirens shattered the quiet of Valentine's night in Brampton, Ontario, Canada. February 14th, 2024, 11:47 p.m., a time when most couples should have been celebrating love, not mourning its destruction. Red and blue lights painted the snow-covered duplex on Torbram Road in haunting colors, casting eerie shadows across the modest homes that housed hundreds of international students chasing the Canadian dream. Officer Sarah Mitchell was first on scene, responding to frantic 911 calls from neighbors, reporting screaming in multiple languages, Hindi, Punjabi, and English, creating a symphony of terror that pierced through the thin walls of the converted student housing. The apartment door hung ajar like a mouth frozen mid-scream, revealing glimpses of chaos within. What she found inside would haunt her for years. Scattered across the blood-stained linoleum floor were dozens of forged immigration documents, fake employment letters, fraudulent bank statements, and marriage certificates that told a story of desperation turned deadly. This wasn't just a domestic dispute gone wrong. This was the violent conclusion of a carefully orchestrated immigration scam that had been 3 years in the making. What started as one desperate student's plan to secure permanent residency would end in a Valentine's Day massacre that would shake Brampton's tight-knit Indian community to its core and expose the dark underbelly of Canada's international student system. 6 months earlier, when autumn leaves were falling and hope still lived in young hearts, 3 lives intersected in ways none of them could have predicted. Each carried dreams of success, love, and belonging in a country that promised everything but guaranteed nothing. Vikram Sharma embodied every parent's sacrifice and every emigrant's hope. At 26, he cut a lean figure walking across the Conestoga College campus, his secondhand winter jacket unable to hide the weight of expectations pressing down on his shoulders. He had arrived from Jalandhar, Punjab in September 2021, carrying not just his engineering textbooks, but the dreams of an entire family who had bet everything on his success. His father, a small-time farmer, had sold their ancestral land, 3 generations of family history, for 35,000 Canadian dollars to fund Vikram's education. The money covered tuition, but little else. Vikram lived in a basement apartment shared with 3 other students, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, surviving on instant noodles and the occasional free meal at the Gurudwara. He worked part-time at a pro-Canada station, counting every dollar while watching his grades slip under the crushing pressure of financial stress. As the only son in a traditional Punjabi family, Vikram carried more than just academic pressure. He was the golden ticket, the pathway to bringing his parents and younger sister to Canada. His student visa would expire in 6 months, and his grades weren't strong enough for the provincial Mamani program. Each night, he video called home to his parents' hopeful faces, unable to tell them that their son, their investment in the future, was failing. 24-year-old Siman represented everything beautiful about the immigrant experience. She had arrived in 2020 to study business at Sheridan College, and unlike many of her peers, she had managed to balance work and studies with grace. Her job at Tim Hortons near campus had made her a familiar face to hundreds of international students who gathered there not just for coffee, but for the comfort of hearing Punjabi spoken behind the counter. Siman lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment with her roommate, Pia, both splitting the $1,800 monthly rent while sending money home to aging parents in Amritsar. Her father had been a government clerk, her mother a schoolteacher, middle-class people who had sacrificed their retirement savings to give their daughter opportunities they never had. Siman's dream wasn't just personal success. She wanted to bring her parents to Canada before her father's diabetes and her mother's arthritis made travel impossible. Unlike many students drowning in cynicism and survival mode, Samantha maintained an infectious optimism. She believed in love, in fairness, in the idea that hard work and good intentions would be rewarded. Her student visa had 8 months left, and she had started researching immigration lawyers, believing that her strong grades and work experience would open doors. She still believed in happy endings. Then there was Ravi Mehta, the predator, who had learned to dress his exploitation in the clothing of help. At 29, he had been in Canada longer than most, arriving as an engineering student in 2018, only to fail out after 2 years of partying and poor choices. Instead of returning to India in shame, he had discovered a more lucrative path, exploiting the desperation of students like his former self. Ravi had fashioned himself as an immigration consultant, though he lacked any official credentials. Operating out of a small office above an Indian grocery store on Airport Road, he presented himself as someone who understood the system, someone who could help students navigate the complex immigration process. His real business was simpler and more sinister. He brokered fake marriages between students facing deportation and those who needed permanent residency. His operation was sophisticated yet discreet. He charged $15,000 per couple, a fortune for students, but cheaper than legitimate immigration lawyers with no guarantee of success. He provided coaching, fake documents, and most importantly, connections. Ravi understood that desperate people made poor decisions, and he had built his modest wealth on that fundamental truth.
The convergence happened at the Brampton Cultural Center during the 2023 Diwali celebration. The center, housed in a converted warehouse, had been transformed with strings of lights, colorful rangoli patterns, and the aroma of homemade samosas and jalebis. For one night, hundreds of international students could forget their struggles and pretend they were home. Vikram had come reluctantly, dragged by his roommates, who insisted that all work and no celebration would drive him insane. He stood against the wall nursing a cup of chai, watching families dance to Bollywood hits and feeling the familiar ache of homesickness. That's when he saw her. Siman was performing with a group of girls from her college, their bright lehengas spinning as they danced to a traditional Punjabi song. Her smile was genuine, uninhibited by the weight of visa deadlines and financial stress. When she laughed at her friend's misstep, the sound cut through the music and crowd noise, reaching Vikram like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and for a moment, the crushing pressure of immigration deadlines and family expectations faded away. Here was someone who understood the struggle, someone who shared the same dreams and fears, someone who might make this foreign country feel like home. Neither of them noticed Ravi Mehta watching from the shadows near the registration table, his experienced eyes cataloging the desperation he saw in Vikram's posture, the genuine sweetness he observed in Siman's interactions. He had learned to spot potential clients the way a predator identifies wounded prey. In his mind, he was already calculating profit margins. As the night wound down and families gathered their tired children, as the last notes of devotional music faded and volunteers began cleaning up the decorations, 3 lives had been set on a collision course. Vikram walked home with Siman's math echoing in his ears. Siman fell asleep thinking about the shy boy with sad eyes who had asked for her number. And Ravi made notes in his phone about 2 new potential clients who would be desperate enough to need his services soon. None of them knew that this innocent meeting, a boy noticing a girl's smile during a cultural celebration, would trigger a chain of events leading to bloodshed, betrayal, and a Valentine's Day that would forever change Brampton's Indian community. The seeds of tragedy had been planted in a moment of hope, and in 6 months, they would bloom into violence that would shock a nation. The first real conversation happened 3 days after the Valley at the 24-hour Tim Hortons on Queen Street, where international students gathered like moths to fluorescent light. It was 2 a.m., and both Vikram and Siman sat hunched over textbooks, nursing cold coffee and the shared exhaustion of students working multiple jobs while chasing impossible dreams. "You look like you haven't slept in weeks," Siman said. glancing up from her marketing assignment to find Vikram staring blankly at differential equations that might as well have been hieroglyphs. "Sleep is a luxury I can't afford," he replied in Punjabi, the familiar words feeling like coming home after speaking English all day to professors and customers who saw him as just another foreign student. Their conversation flowed like water finding its path downhill. They talked about the crushing weight of family expectations, the constant calculation of every dollar spent, the way their parents' voices sounded smaller and more distant with each passing video call home. Siman spoke about her father's diabetes medication becoming more expensive, how her mother pretended not to worry about money but had stopped buying herself new clothes. Vikram described the way his father's hands shook slightly now when he showed neighbors Vikram's engineering textbooks on video calls. The pride mixed with desperation that made Vikram's chest tight with guilt. These late-night study sessions became ritual. They would meet after their shifts, Siman closing the Tim Hortons at midnight, Vikram finishing inventory at the gas station at 1 a.m., and find solace in shared struggle. Siman helped Vikram with his English essays, her business school training making her naturally good at clear communication. Vikram helped her with statistics, his engineering background making numbers dance to his will. When Siman laughed, really laughed, not the polite chuckle she gave to customers or professors, something awakened in Vikram that he thought his circumstances had killed. A protective instinct, a desire to see that genuine happiness again, to maybe even be the cause of it. When she introduced him to her parents via FaceTime, speaking in rapid Punjabi about a nice boy from a good family, he felt the weight of being someone's hope rather than their burden. His father approved immediately. "Engineering student, good family from Jalandhar, respectful boy," he told Siman's mother in the background. Traditional approval came easily when the surface looked so perfect. But even as genuine feelings bloomed between them, Vikram's immigration clock continued its merciless countdown. His student visa showed 5 months remaining, his grades had slipped to barely passing, and his bank account hovered near zero despite working 25 hours a week at the gas station. The stress manifested in panic attacks he hid from Siman, cold sweats during immigration law lectures, and desperate late-night Google searches for alternatives to deportation, Canada.
That's when Ravi Mehta made his move. It happened after a community volleyball game at the recreation center on a cold November evening. Vikram was walking to his car when Ravi appeared beside him, seemingly out of nowhere, his breath visible in the freezing air. "Tough game tonight, bye," Ravi said, using the familiar term that immediately established kinship. "You looked distracted. Everything okay?" Vikram recognized him vaguely from community events, but had never spoken to him directly. "Just tired from work," he replied, keys jingling in his trembling hands. "Work, studies, immigration stress?" Ravi nodded knowingly. "I've been watching you, Vikram. You're carrying a lot of weight for someone so young. 5 months left on your visa? Grades not quite good enough for the provincial nominee program. Not enough money for a good immigration lawyer." The accuracy of Ravi's assessment sent chills down Vikram's spine that had nothing to do with the November cold. "How do you... I help people like you," Ravi interrupted smoothly. "People who work hard deserve to stay, but got caught in the system's cracks. There are ways around the traditional routes, legal ways, that the government doesn't advertise, but definitely allows." He paused, studying Vikram's face carefully. "You're close with that girl, Siman, right? Sweet girl, also facing visa expiration soon. You could help each other." "What do you mean?" Ravi's smile was practiced. "Sympathetic marriage of convenience. You both need permanent residency. You both care about each other already. Make it official. Get your PR status. Then decide what happens next. $15,000 gets you both Canadian citizenship and the freedom to choose your own futures. The number hit Vikram like a physical blow. $15,000 was more than he made in 8 months at the gas station. I don't have that kind of money. $5,000 upfront, $10,000 after successful PR application. I provide all documentation, coaching for immigration interviews, everything you need. Think about it, Vikram. Deportation means family shame, wasted sacrifice, dreams dead at 26. This gives you options. Ravi handed him a business card that looked surprisingly professional. Don't think too long. Immigration doesn't wait for anyone. That night, Vikram lay on his mattress staring at the ceiling while his roommates snored around him. Ravi's words echoed in his mind like a mantra. Tell her after you're both safe with permanent residence. Protect her first. Explain later. The rationalization came easier than he expected. He genuinely cared about Siman. More than cared, he was falling in love with her laugh, her optimism, her ability to find joy in small moments despite our shared struggles. Wasn't protecting someone you love from deportation and family shame actually romantic? Wasn't ensuring their future together worth a temporary deception? His father's voice on their last video call haunted him. "Beta, your mother cries every night thinking about you so far away. But she tells everyone in the village how proud she is that her son will bring the whole family to Canada soon." The deteriorating health, the mounting medical bills, the way his parents had aged years in the months since he'd left, all of it pressed down on him like weights he couldn't lift. 3 days later, Vikram called Ravi. The coaching sessions began immediately. Ravi operated from a small office above Maharaja Grocery on Airport Road. The walls were covered with certificates that looked official, but would later prove to be completely fabricated. He provided Vikram with fake employment records showing steady income, doctored bank statements indicating savings that didn't exist, and most importantly, a script for their love story that would satisfy immigration officers. Immigration wants to believe in love, Ravi explained during their second meeting, sliding documents across his cluttered desk. Give them a story they can root for. You met at Diwali, bonded over shared culture, fell in love over late-night study sessions. Keep it simple, keep it romantic, keep it believable. The payment plan seemed manageable until Vikram actually tried to raise $5,000. He took loans from 3 different community members, each thinking they were the only one helping a desperate student. The debt added another layer of stress to his daily existence, making sleep even more elusive and forcing him to work extra shifts that left him exhausted during his increasingly rare study sessions with Siman. Meanwhile, their relationship continued to develop naturally. Vikram took Siman to Niagara Falls in December, the winter landscape creating a crystalline backdrop for what she thought was a spontaneous romantic gesture. He had actually chosen the location because Ravi suggested it would photograph well for immigration purposes. But when Siman gasped at the frozen waterfalls and threw her arms around him in genuine delight, his guilt nearly overwhelmed him. "This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," she whispered against his ear, her breath warm in the frigid air. "Not the most beautiful," he replied, looking at her face lit up with wonder. And for a moment, his feelings were completely genuine, unmarred by ulterior motives. The proposal happened that same afternoon. Vikram dropped to his knee on the snow while tourists took photos and Siman cried tears that froze on her cheeks before she could wipe them away. Her yes was immediate, enthusiastic, followed by rapid-fire phone calls to her parents, who had been waiting, hopefully, for exactly this news. The engagement party at the local Gurdwara drew over 200 people from Brampton's Punjabi community. Siman glowed with happiness, accepting congratulations and blessings while planning their future aloud to anyone who would listen. "We want 3 children," she told the aunties, 2 boys and a girl. Vikram wants to name the first one after his father. Vikram smiled and nodded, playing the role of devoted fiancé while drowning in the weight of his deception. Every blessing felt like a curse, every congratulation like an accusation, but it was too late to back out now. The documents were filed, the money was borrowed, and Siman's happiness depended on believing their love story was real. Only Pia, Siman's sharp-eyed roommate, noticed the inconsistencies, the way Vikram sometimes forgot details of stories he'd told before, his nervous habit of checking his phone constantly, the phone calls he took outside, speaking in whispers. But even Pia, suspicious by nature, couldn't imagine the scope of the deception being perpetrated against her best friend. The wedding date was set for February 14th, Valentine's Day. Siman's idea because she believed in the poetry of love conquering all obstacles. Neither she nor Vikram knew that by then their story would have become a tragedy that would shock an entire community and destroy everything they had built together. The morning of February 14th, 2024, dawned crisp and bright, with fresh snow covering Brampton. The Guru Nanak Gurdwara buzzed with preparation as volunteers arranged marigold garlands for the Anand Karaj ceremony. For Siman, this was the culmination of every dream she'd carried since arriving in Canada. She sat surrounded by community aunties, applying henna to her hands. Her borrowed red and gold lehenga carried blessings from another woman's happy marriage. During their video call that morning, Siman's mother had cried, lamenting she couldn't be there. In the men's section, Vikram's hands shook as he tied his turban, the saffron fabric feeling like a noose. His roommates joked about married life, but their words sounded distant. Every blessing felt like a curse. The ceremony began at noon. Since Vikram's family couldn't afford to travel from India, the community rallied around them. Dole players filled the Gurdwara with joyous beats, but Vikram felt like he was walking to his execution. Inside the prayer hall, Siman waited beside the Guru Granth Sahib. When their eyes met, her face lit up with pure happiness that made Vikram's chest constrict with guilt. She believed this was their beginning. He knew it was built on lies. The 4 lavan, sacred circles around the holy book, each represented spiritual union stages. With each step, Siman squeezed his hand tighter, tears streaming down her cheeks. With each vow, Vikram felt pieces of his soul breaking away. Married life began in a cramped apartment. Siman transformed it into a home with fairy lights and homemade rotis. She would wake early to pack Vikram's lunch, humming with contentment that broke his heart daily. The immigration interviews came 3 weeks later. They sat across from the officer answering questions about their relationship. "How did you know she was the one?" the officer asked Vikram. "Her laugh," he replied, for once not lying. "The first time I heard her laugh, I knew I wanted to protect that happiness forever." The officer approved their application. Siman was ecstatic. Vikram felt like he was drowning. Financial pressure was crushing him. He worked double shifts while scrambling to pay debt Siman didn't know existed. The stress manifested in panic attacks that worried his new wife. Meanwhile, Pia watched with growing suspicion. She noticed Vikram's constant phone checking and habit of stepping outside for certain calls. The breakthrough came by accident. Pia heard Vikram on the phone. "I need more time for the final payment. The interest on the loans is killing me." A man's voice responded, "Contract was clear, Vikram. You got what you paid for, a wife and immigration approval." Pia began following Vikram, documenting meetings with Ravi at coffee shops. The smoking gun came when she glimpsed text messages about contract completion and payment schedules. She confronted Siman 2 days later, spreading evidence across their old apartment. Photos of Vikram with Ravi, recordings, and screenshots painted a clear picture of deception. The color drained from Siman's face as she processed the evidence. Every romantic gesture was tainted by calculated manipulation. The confrontation happened that evening.
Vikram found Siman sitting at their dining table, evidence spread before her. "Explain this," she said quietly, sliding a text message across the table about final payment and services rendered. Vikram's world collapsed. All his careful lies, his genuine love, everything crumbled under documented truth. $15,000, she said, deadly calm. "That's what you're worth to me." He tried explaining about desperation and immigration pressure, how his feelings had become real, but Siman's trust couldn't be repaired. "You made me an accomplice to fraud," she said. "You destroyed my immigration status, my reputation, my future." That night, they slept apart for the first time since their marriage. Both knew their marriage was over. But what Vikram didn't realize was that Siman wasn't just heartbroken. She was planning. The trusting romantic was gone, replaced by someone calculating and cold. The seeds of revenge had been planted, and they would bloom in ways that would shock everyone who thought they knew the gentle girl who served coffee and dreamed of bringing her parents to Canada.
The transformation began at 3 a.m. on a cold February morning as Siman sat in their dark apartment staring at her marriage certificate, now nothing more than an expensive piece of fraud. The gentle girl who had served coffee with a smile was dying, replaced by someone harder, colder, infinitely more dangerous. The betrayal trauma ran deeper than heartbreak. Vikram had made her an unwitting accomplice to immigration fraud, a crime that carried up to 5 years in prison and immediate deportation. Every document they had submitted together was now evidence of a federal crime. Siman spent 3 days researching immigration law, learning that marriage fraud could destroy her future forever. No country would accept her if Canada marked her as an immigration criminal. Her dreams of bringing her aging parents to safety were poisoned by Vikram's deception. The community's shame would be unbearable. In Brampton's tight-knit Punjabi community, immigration fraud would make her family name synonymous with disgrace. Her parents would face suspicious looks in their Amritsar neighborhood. When Vikram approached her with flowers and apologies, Siman looked at him with eyes that made him step backward. The warmth was gone, replaced by calculation and ice. "We need to talk," she said calmly. "I've been thinking about us." "I forgive you," she said simply. And Vikram nearly collapsed with gratitude. "But we need to fix this properly, together." What Vikram didn't realize was that Siman's forgiveness was the first move in a carefully planned game of revenge. She convinced Pia to help gather evidence, not out of hatred, but justice. The false reconciliation began immediately. Siman played the understanding wife while secretly recording their conversations. "Tell me about Ravi," she would say during quiet moments. "Help me forgive completely." Desperate to rebuild her trust, Vikram revealed everything. The initial approach, the exact money involved, the fake documents, even names of other couples who had used Rav's services. Siman listened with sympathetic nods while her phone captured every word. She expanded her evidence collection systematically. Using Vikram's computer, she photographed financial records and text histories. She followed him to meetings with Ravi, recording conversations from nearby coffee shop tables. The immigration fraud complaint she prepared was 27 pages long, detailing Ravi's entire operation with names, dates, and recorded confessions. She included evidence of 12 other fraudulent marriages, turning her personal betrayal into a federal case. As January turned to February, pressure began crushing all 3 participants. Vikram's desperation reached new heights as debts mounted. He took additional loans at higher interest rates. Working 18-hour days, the stress manifested in panic attacks and erratic behavior. Ravi began making threats. "You better not be thinking of backing out," he warned during a meeting Simran secretly recorded. "I have photos of you signing documents. You think your little wife won't face criminal charges?" The threats escalated when Ravi grew suspicious. "If you or that wife even think about talking to authorities, I'll make sure you both disappear," he snarled, grabbing Vikram's arm hard enough to leave bruises. Neighbors began noticing constant arguments and shouting matches. Immigration authorities, responding to anonymous tips about suspicious marriage patterns, began reviewing applications more carefully.
By Valentine's Day 2024, exactly 1 year after their fraudulent wedding, Siman had completed her preparation for revenge. She arranged the final meeting through text. "We need to end this properly tonight. Bring Ravi. 8 p.m. Vikram convinced Ravi to come, believing she wanted to negotiate. Ravi arrived suspicious but confident. Pia came carrying evidence in a thick folder. The apartment felt smaller with all 4 people present. Siman had placed a kitchen knife on the counter while preparing snacks. Everyone noted its location. "So," Siman said, settling into her chair with unnatural calm, "let's talk about the future." None of them realized that 3 years of lies and betrayal had created a volatile mixture that would explode within the hour. The clock showed 9:23 p.m. In exactly 3 hours, emergency vehicles would be racing through snow toward their apartment, responding to screaming that could be heard through the building's walls. The metamorphosis was complete. Siman's core, the trusting romantic, was gone. In her place sat someone who had learned that justice sometimes required blood. The explosion came at 9:23 p.m. when Siman placed the evidence folder on the coffee table between them. 27 pages of documentation, photographs, recorded conversations, and financial records that would destroy 3 lives simultaneously. "What's this?" Ravi asked, his casual confidence wavering as he recognized some of the documents. "Justice," Siman replied simply, her voice carrying no emotion. "Evidence of immigration fraud, financial exploitation, and criminal conspiracy. Everything needed to shut down your operation and put you in prison." Vikram's face went white as he realized what his wife had been doing during their supposed reconciliation. "Siman, what have you done?" "What you should have done months ago. I'm turning all of this over to Immigration Canada tomorrow morning. Every couple you've scammed, every fake document, every payment, it's all documented." Ravi lunged forward, grabbing the folder and scattering papers across the small living room. "You stupid, you have no idea what you're playing with. You think you can destroy me without destroying yourself?" "I'm already destroyed," Siman said calmly. "You and your lying husband made sure of that, but I won't let you do this to anyone else."
The confrontation escalated rapidly. Ravi, realizing his entire operation was compromised, began making threats that grew increasingly violent. Vikram got between his wife's betrayal and his own desperation, tried to mediate while protecting his access to the evidence that could save or damn him. "We can work this out," Vikram pleaded. "Simran, think about your parents, your future. If this comes out, we're all finished." "I'm already finished," she screamed, her control facade finally cracking. "My immigration status is fraud. My marriage is fraud. My entire life in Canada is built on your lies." Pit, who had been silent in the corner, stepped forward with her phone. "I have been recording this entire conversation," she announced. "Everything you just said about threats and fraud, it's all documented now." That's when Ravi snapped. The man who had built his modest wealth on exploiting desperate students realized his comfortable life was about to become a prison sentence. He moved toward Pitt's phone, intent on destroying the evidence, but Simran blocked his path. "Get out of my way," he snarled, pushing her aside hard enough to send her stumbling toward the kitchen counter. Her hand found the knife she had placed there earlier, fingers closing around the handle with a certainty that surprised everyone, including herself. "Nobody leaves this apartment until the police arrive," she said, the blade catching the overhead light. What happened next would be debated in court for months. Ravi's version claimed self-defense as he tried to disarm a mentally unstable woman. Pitt insisted Ravi attacked first, lunging for the knife when he realized Simran was serious about calling authorities. Vikram's account changed 3 times, his guilt and desperation making him an unreliable witness to his own tragedy. The screaming that followed could be heard throughout the building, a mixture of Hindi curses, Punjabi prayers, and English pleas for help that created a multilingual symphony of terror. Mrs. Patel next door called 911 at 11:47 p.m., reporting sounds of violence and what she described as someone dying in there. When police arrived 4 minutes later, they found a scene that would haunt the first responders for years. Blood spattered on the white kitchen walls, overturned furniture, and scattered immigration documents, creating a paper trail of broken dreams across the apartment floor.
Detective Sarah Mitchell, a 10-year veteran who thought she had seen everything, stood in the doorway trying to process the cultural complexities of what appeared to be an immigration fraud scheme turned deadly. The survivors' conflicting accounts, the mixture of languages being spoken, the religious items scattered among forged documents, it was unlike anything in her experience. The evidence analysis took weeks. Phone records revealed the systematic nature of Ravi's operation. Financial transactions showed money flowing through dozens of fake marriages, and witness statements painted a picture of a community where desperation had created a market for exploitation. Initially, the tight-knit Indian community resisted cooperating with police. Immigration raids were their greatest fear, and many worried that any interaction with authorities might jeopardize their own status. But as details emerged about the scope of Ravi's operation, anger replaced fear. The investigation uncovered 12 other fraudulent marriages arranged by Ravi over the past 3 years. Young students, mostly women, who had paid thousands of dollars for fake relationships that promised security but delivered only deeper vulnerability. The community slowly began to understand that Simran's violent confrontation had exposed a predator who had been victimizing their most vulnerable members. Community leaders gathered at the Gurudwara to address the crisis. Religious discussions about honesty, community responsibility, and supporting struggling students replaced the whispered gossip that had initially surrounded the tragedy. New support systems were established. Legitimate immigration lawyers who offered sliding scale fees, community funds for students facing deportation, and mentorship programs that provided guidance without exploitation. The media attention was inevitable and intense. National news outlets picked up the story of immigration fraud ending in violence, sparking debates about Canada's international student program and the pressures that drove young people to desperate measures. The Immigration Minister's office announced reviews of marriage-based applications and increased penalties for fraud. The legal aftermath proved as complex as the crime itself. Murder charges were filed, but the cultural context complicated everything. Defense lawyers argued about immigration pressure as a mitigating factor, while prosecutors insisted that desperation didn't justify violence. The case became a symbol of systemic failures that created conditions for tragedy. Federal authorities joined the investigation, turning what began as a domestic violence case into a broader examination of immigration fraud networks across Canada. Other cities reported similar operations, suggesting Ravi's scheme was part of a larger pattern of exploitation. Legitimate international students found themselves under increased scrutiny. Marriage-based immigration applications faced longer processing times, and community organizations scrambled to provide support for students who might otherwise turn to illegal schemes. As winter turned to spring in Brampton, the Indian community tried to heal from trauma that had shattered their sense of security. The modest duplex on Torbram Road, where dreams had died, remained empty, a reminder of how quickly hope could turn to horror. The tragedy had exposed uncomfortable truths about the price of the Canadian dream. Immigration policies that created impossible timelines, tuition costs that forced students into debt, work restrictions that prevented financial stability, all contributing factors that made Ravi's exploitation possible and profitable. In the end, 3 young lives had been destroyed by a system that promised opportunity but provided little support for those struggling to achieve it. The Valentine's Day massacre became more than a crime story. It became a cautionary tale about what happens when desperation meets exploitation in communities where asking for help feels like admitting failure. Simran's transformation from trusting romantic to calculating avenger to violent defendant illustrated how quickly circumstances could strip away everything that defined a person. Her story would be remembered not as a love story gone wrong, but as a warning about the human cost of immigration policies that created more problems than they solved. The Canadian dream for too many students like Vikram and Simran had become a nightmare written in blood on apartment walls, documented in court records, and mourned by a community that had lost its innocence along with its children.